So are the droids in Star Wars sentient? Yeah, but it's really complicated.
So, sentience is the quality of self awareness, abstract thinking, and higher reasoning. The Star Wars Wikipedia states that sentience possess a personality, a feeling of emotion, and the ability to think intelligently. Now, if we look at a lot of the droids in the Star Wars series, a lot of them exhibit these qualities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're sentient. I think that droids are programmed to do certain tasks and accomplish certain goals for their masters, and no single droid is just given sentience. It's something that needs to be gained over time.
Like experience, like they have to get it through experience.
Yeah, so droids that get a lot of screen time, which to us would mean droids that have more experience, like R2D2 or C3PO, have encountered more things in the world or in what they know is their life. Even their lives are complicated because there's mind resets and a whole bunch of things that can throw their existence down certain paths that it's difficult to track. But overall, the droids to us that seem more sentient, the ones that seem more human, are the ones that we see the most. So this completely goes against what we just stated sentience to be, of the quality of self-awareness and abstract thinking. How can something learn to think, or how can something learn to know that it exists? It's kind of like this roundabout weird thing that's difficult to wrap your heads around. But with what we know about the droids in Star Wars, specifically R2D2 and C3PO, those being the main droids, I think that it's safest to say, in my opinion, that they are sentient. Now, Hayden, what do you think about all this? Do you think that all droids are sentient? Do you think that this is a blanket statement that can't be applied to every droid? Or what are your opinions?
I think I agree all of them are sentient, but I feel like they have to earn it through experience, like you stated. I feel like C3PO and R2D2 would be more sentient than the others because they exhibit more emotions, express more emotions than maybe say like a droid that cleans up on the Death Star or a battle droid or one searching for maybe Luke. You know what I mean? Like C3PO and R2D2 exhibit more emotion, be more scared than most of the other droids.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to point out. A lot of times throughout the entire um, Star Wars series, we do see a lot of C3PO, specifically C3PO for some reason, being worried about his life and worried about dying, or he has a very um, he's very
Scared
careful with
mindset.
his life. He's very scared. I think that in a lot of
Much more.
ways I relate to C3PO and being worried about everything, but it's he exhibits these human qualities, and if sentience is the the knowledge of self, the fact that he knows that he exists. If he's scared for his life, that means that he knows he exists. So droids, and all droids really, do have the ability to become sentient through experience. There's nothing that makes C3PO or R2D2 special compared to other droids like U3PO or like uh, R5D4. There's really nothing that makes these two different other than the fact that we just see them more and that they have more
Overall experience.
experience. Yeah, yeah. Um, so big picture, sentience in Star Wars is gained rather than being something that,
It's just given.
yeah, if that makes sense.
Now, thinking about it though, they really do not have many rights, do they? Like, what kind of rights do they have?
Yeah, so um, in the newer movies they get more rights, but that's not relevant here. Um, in episodes 4, 5, and 6, droids have extremely little rights in any aspect. You know, there was that scene where they're walking into what was the name of the place where
The
Jabba the Hutt?
canteen.
Yeah, the
Walking
canteen.
into the canteen.
Yeah, and you know, we don't serve your kind here. You know, generalizing droids as being a kind or like a race of sorts, which is interesting to point out because even
That
though
might
that
show that they're more alive.
yeah, even though that speaks to how they're treated in society, they're being recognized as a species, which interesting thing to discuss, but
All right.
they're
So we have a list here. We're
yes.
gonna rate most of the droids from episodes 4, 5, and 6 by what we think are have the most rights to the lowest rights.
Yeah, I also think it's going to be another important aspect is to discuss the sentience of each of these droids as well as we go on, since we said that it's more of a spectrum rather than a yes or no type thing. But this tier list here, Darth Jar Jar being the highest ranking that one can get, and Corden Jar Jar being the lowest. We are basically going to rank these droids by how many rights they're given in society as a whole, and then we're also going to relate this into their sentience and how rights sometimes can either help or inhibit the gaining of consciousness. So for number one here, we're going to start off with R2D2, the tried and true.
Almost.
Everybody in Star Wars, or everybody that's ever heard of Star Wars, has heard of R2D2. He's the staple droid, the staple, really, image of Star Wars. You know.
Almost definitely. And with his rights, like you said, he has the most. He's gone off of his master Luke to do his own quest. I feel like he's one of the more respected droids.
Definitely
With his
more
rights.
respected. He's also shows the ability to think for himself a lot. Specifically, when he was given a message to deliver to Obi-Wan, but he would not give the message to anyone else other than Obi-Wan. You know, even though when Luke was appointed as his new master, he would not give this distress message to Luke until he was coaxed by C-3PO to do so, you know. So he shows that he's capable of making decisions for himself and deciding what he does with his own information, if that makes any sense. You know, he just doesn't listen to orders that anyone gives. You know, he's very
Unless it's his original master or one that he chooses.
yeah. So we also see throughout Star Wars that his original master of Obi-Wan Kenobi changes to being more so Luke Skywalker. So it's not necessarily one person that he listens to. He kind of figures out
Picks
who he trusts, you know, and he chooses the people that he wants to be his master. You know, it's a two-way street at that point too. You know, it's not just he can choose anyone to be his master. You know, there's mutual respect between them, but that's what makes it so great, I guess. So I think no surprise, highest tier ranking. R2D2 is very respected in both the Star Wars society and the Star Wars community. Definitely most rights.
Now,
And
do you
this,
think he has enough rights?
do I think he has an? I mean, I don't think that any droid really has enough rights. Um, but I
I
think
feel
that
like they gain more depending on, like you said, the respectance. Like R2D2 is gonna have more rights maybe than that probe droid at the bottom there.
yeah. So R2D2 also um, is he's not a droid for the Empire. You know, he's on the good side that we see. So he's I this is something that we're gonna get into much later, but the droids in the Empire, or the droids that are owned by the Empire, seem to be given much less freedom and much less rights. So R2D2 definitely is on the good side of things. He's definitely getting as many rights as he can. I think he has the most rights of any character in Star Wars, really, or not any character, any droid in Star Wars. And it is definitely deserved, but it's still not enough because he still is a droid and he still has to obey a master. But it's mutually beneficial, because I don't know how R2 would really work if he was just a being with no master, like his purpose is gained from his master, and his master benefits from R2's
I feel like every droid
abilities,
has to have an overall master. I feel like they can't go on with free will. I mean, they can. They can do as they please, but I feel like it has to be an overall master sends them out on like a mission. Like R2 with the plans, he was sent by Leia to give this message to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, he did that himself to get there, but he had an overall mission or plan.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that he does, and a lot of things that anything that any droid does, is really just an order from somebody, but it's what give the droids in their current state their purpose. I think that if we just, or if the droids in Star Wars were all of a sudden just given complete freedom, no master, no really no guidance to go on.
I feel like they might just shut down.
Yeah, because they wouldn't really know what to do with themselves, even though they're capable of doing their own things. That's really just not ideal.
Yeah.
Droids are sentient, but they're best contained, and that sounds really bad to say, but it's
Now, if you think about it, though, C-3PO has the exact same amount of rights. You'd think he'd go up with
yeah. So
Jar Jar.
so you think that
So
C-3PO
much less.
would be up here? Yeah. So I think that also there's an appeal that we get from C-3PO since he speaks English. We're able to understand what he's saying, and we're able to emotionally relate with him. He's also a humanoid figure, so he's portrayed much more human than R2D2 is.
Yeah.
But he is treated not nearly as good as R2D2 is. There's specifically a scene where he's in the Millennium Falcon with Princess Leia and Chewbacca. I think Han Solo was there too. And he keeps talking about statistics. He keeps saying numbers. I mean, he's a protocol droid. That's what he's meant to do. But he gets told to just shut up by Princess Leia, and he listens, of course. But there's a lot of times throughout all of episodes 4, 5, and 6 where he's really more of an annoyance than he is help. And that speaks to his sentience, sure, but that doesn't really speak to his rights.
But it also shows that, like, in episode 5, when he was destroyed, how Han and Leia didn't really show much concern for him being destroyed. They were kind of like, oh, we'll fix him later.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was more so Chewbacca that was showing the concern for C-3PO. When he got all his parts and then was eventually carrying him around on his back.
But also, C-3PO was not showing much, like, gratitude for that. As you can see, he was always, like, making fun of Chewbacca for not fully completing him and stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's the way that he acts is what gives him the less amount of rights that he has.
Yeah, C-3PO is definitely...
He wants an R2 is.
If we're talking about sentience, C-3PO is definitely the most sentient of...
Oh, most definitely.
But he is also the most annoying, and because of that, he's getting put in Beatbox Jar Jar, tier B. Definitely not as respected, and I think it's deserved, because who really wants to listen to C-3PO like that? Not me.
I mean, true. I would not want to go on listening to that all day.
Next up, we have Forlom, a bounty hunter that was given the task to find the Millennium Falcon by Darth Vader. Now, we don't see much of this character here, but he's a droid with this humanoid type of figure, almost the same as C-3PO if you compare the two here. And we don't get to really see how he interacts with other droids and how he interacts with other people. But we know that he is given freedom as he is a bounty hunter, and he is able to work for himself and make a living by doing what he does with bounty hunting. So I think that he's given enough rights to be put up in Darth Jar Jar, simply because instead of taking orders from Darth Vader, he
He follows his
is he follows his own orders. Nothing is stopping him from just deciding to not look for the Millennium Falcon. He has
chooses his own bounties he wants to hunt for.
mm-hmm. And also with his sentience, he definitely, if he's bounty hunting, is sentient because there has to be a motive behind this.
Hmm.
It's not implied that he's doing this because he's ordered to. He's probably just doing it to make a living and to just survive. So that also speaks to his just knowledge and his awareness. Is this deserved? Is this enough rights? I mean, really, this is as close as you can get. I know we said this with R2, but this is really as close as you get to a freely functioning droid in society. Boba Fett is a human that we see, and he has the same kind of role and same sort of, um, like role in society as he does, but is a human instead of a droid.
Who they want to hunt, they pick who they want to pick. It can't really get more sentient than that when they're controlling their lives exactly how they want to.
Yeah, and it's we can't go too far as to say that just being able to control their lives means that they're sentient.
Yeah, no, but I feel like it makes it more sentient because he can control. He knows he's alive. He knows he has to make a living, and he knows that he can do it off bounty hunting.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely belongs in Darth Jar Jar up here with R2. Next is U3PO. So we know very little about U3PO, but from what we know, he looks like C3PO, but instead of having a golden body, has this silver body. Still a protocol droid, and is on the ship with Princess Leia when she's captured in the beginning of Episode 4. Now this droid made it onto the list simply because it's one of the first droids that we really see in the entire Star Wars series, being
In the original trilogy.
in the original trilogy. Yeah, Episode 4. It's the first one to come out, and in one of the first scenes,
5 in the City in the Clouds. If you remember when C3PO was like, "Oh, a familiar face,"
oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
Droid said something to him, which we don't know, but we like to interpret it as shit face.
yeah, yeah. So not a great attitude from U3PO here. Um, but
But
I think that if U3PO can start out on Princess Leia's ship and then end up in the City in the Clouds, um, there's definitely some sort of rights. I think that got him there, but that's really not to say that it was captured or transported. We don't really know much. That's
I feel like it would go in night because it's more like a middle normal class droid. It's kind of like it has its job, it does what it does. It doesn't go off like C3PO or R2D2 does, where they do their own thing when they want.
I think U3PO is the staple of Star Wars droid mediocrity. It's just nothing crazy. There's no massive impact this droid has on the universe, and there's really nothing negative that happens to the droid. They're just kind of existing, and that's it. A nice little middle ground here. Next up, though, is TT8LY7. So this is what I like to call the Ring doorbell, the official first Ring doorbell ever created in the Star Wars universe. So this is the Ring doorbell for Jabba the Hutt that scans C-3PO and R2-D2 as they're going into Jabba's. What is it called? Is it
What's this called? Jabba's Hutt.
Jabba's Hutt, yeah. This droid, I think without even saying
has
anything.
totally the most amount of rights. I don't know what you're talking about. It totally can move
Oh,
freely.
100%.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Darth Jar Jar.
Definitely,
No, but
definitely.
that droid is there all day, meant for scanning and scanning only. It pops in and it pops out. That's all it is meant for. I feel
Yeah.
like the rights, it doesn't have any because it's not allowed to move freely, think for itself. It tells Jar Jar who is at the door and who is not.
Yeah, that's basically all that this is used for. It's definitely being just used with no sort of compensation, no sort of um, just reward. It's just being used.
Yeah,
And I don't think that this is proper per se for any droid. But also, if you look at the makeup of this droid, I mean, it was clearly
it was
built.
created for surveillance.
It was created for this being. This droid wasn't something like C3PO that could have millions of different functions. This droid was made for this, and in that, um, or knowing that it was created just to scan people at a door, it has the amount of rights that it deserves for that job.
Yeah,
But for droids as a whole, definitely undervalued.
doesn't have enough
Yeah,
rights in my
doesn't have enough
opinion.
rights. So overall, not enough rights and no rights at all. So next up is R5D4 here. So we know very little about R5D4 other than he was,
On
captured
that,
and he was being transported with R2D2 and eventually just being sold to Luke
by the
Skywalker.
Jawas.
Yeah, by the Jawas. And he was going to be the droid that took, or that stood in place as R2D2. But there's this scene in the movie where, as he's going off to be with Luke, something on it, I forget what the exact
I think
name
it
of
was
it was.
C-3PO. I think he sabotaged something on him to where R2D2 could be with Luke
You
to
think he
confront.
sabotaged? I think that this droid, out of self, uh, out of self preservedness, what's the word I'm looking for? He's trying to protect himself. He's trying to save himself. I think that he blew himself up purposely to make himself less useful to Luke. That way he wouldn't have to be stuck with a master that he didn't know was going to be fair or that was going to be, um, yeah, just fair in general. I think that he was capable of realizing that being essentially sold into slavery was not good, and he was able to stop that and live in whatever freedom he
I
has with the Jawas. But
I think he would go down to Jar Jar because he has the normal rights as a droid, but with being a slave to the Jar Jars being sold and not being able to just have a constant master, he has less rights. He can't do as he more or less pleases like you 3PO can.
yeah, so not enough rights. It's not deserved because he does have a lot of the same functionalities that I think R2D2 does. Um, but I mean, he was just dealt a bad hand, really. He was taken into slavery, was, you know,
He also just got portrayed to the wrong master at the wrong time.
yeah, that's basically it. Next up, we have the mouse droids that worked on the Death Star. Now, this is funny because the mouse droids you normally think have zero rights, have zero sentience, which they really don't. However, they're still capable of performing their daily tasks unsupervised, which means that there's some sort of trust, however much that may be, between their master. I don't know who controls these droids, but between their master and um, them. So even
Yeah,
though
so I feel like it would go up to Knight with U3PO because it can perform its natural rights as a droid to do what it is programmed to do.
yeah, so these mouse droids here were made to just clean to sweep the floor. You know, so it's not like this is a droid like C3PO that has the potential to do these amazing things, to be this crazy translator, to do any of this. These droids were made to clean, and that's what they're doing, and they're given the right to do what they were initially intended to do.
Yeah.
And that again is another staple of droid mediocrity. They're doing what they're intended, nothing more, nothing less. So I think that this is a good spot for mouse droid to lie. Next up, we have 3B6RA7. Now, this is a droid that was also captured by the Jawas at some point and was on the same transport with R2D2 and C3PO. Now, this was also, again, included for the more so the humorous aspect, but there is some important things to say here. He was not even taken out and shown to Luke as a droid to be bought. So he is almost given less rights than a slave, which is, I mean, I don't even know how you go lower than that. But
Like, he's not even getting the right to be able to be shown to be like, hey, I want that droid. No, they're like, nah, you're staying in here. You're junk.
exactly, he's kept in complete confinement. He doesn't even have the chance to escape. You know, there's really, I mean, this should go under here, you know. There's
Have its
there
own ranking
there
below.
is this is below Corden Jar Jar.
The
There's,
doorknob has more rights than this guy.
I mean, the doorknob at least is able to function, is able to do what it's able to do.
This
But
guy is just turned off in the Jawa's little vehicle.
yeah, so not a whole lot going
So
on
yeah,
here.
it probably would go down with Corden Jar Jar as well.
Yeah. Next, though, here is another interesting one. It's 21B, the medical droid that helps Luke when he loses his arm, and there's another instance that it helps Luke that I can't recall off the top of my head. But this droid is interesting to point out because we don't really get to see how this droid is able to think like C3PO would be. We just know that it has a purpose, and its purpose is healing.
And it
And
can perform its task without being interrupted.
yeah, so this droid is able to. I think this is another just mediocre. This droid does
Base
what
droid.
he does, and that is really about it. But since this droid is helping Luke and he's helping the good guys, you know, I think that it's fair to put it in Master.
I
The,
feel like when the time would come, if he had the chance to help the Empire or the Resistance, I feel like he would still pick the Resistance. I feel like it has that mindset knowing I need to help these people more than these people.
well, yeah, and especially how we started this off talking about sentience and sentience being based on experience. This droid would remember helping Luke and would remember its time with the Resistance. So it's interesting to think about how would it choose between the Empire and the Resistance if it was given that choice. You know, I would like to
Yeah.
think that it would choose the good guys, but you know, who are the good guys? You know, I would like to think that it would choose the Resistance, but we never really know. You know, we're never gonna know. That's just speculation. But I think Master, again, just for the fact that it can help and it can heal. Now, next up, we have the interrogation droid that Darth Vader uses to interrogate Princess Leia. Now, this seems to be more of a repurposed droid, I think, because I would like to assume that this droid just doesn't go around with syringes attached on it, just, you know, pointing them at people. But
It would make sense more that it was a medical droid to begin with.
it would make
Probably
sense.
repurposed to be interrogation, use the needles it has to get any information out of Leia that they could use.
Yeah, that's never confirmed as far as I know, but it is definitely a good thought to be put out there. But in terms of rights, I mean, I think that this again is just about really as low as it can go, following direct commands from Darth Vader to just do something that it wasn't really intended to do, and especially do something to hurt, you know, to torture. That's really not anything that we want to see, and especially when that wasn't the intended purpose. You know, when it's not a good look, not a good look. Definitely F tier or James Corden Jar Jar. Next up is the Gronk droid, the power droid. Now, this is funny. We see a lot of these, but we also see very little of these. So it seems like these are all over the place, but we never really get to interact with them to see what they do or how they think. But we also do know that one of these droids was on the same ship and the same transport as R2D2 was with the Jawas being sold. So if we're going to assume that this was that droid, I think that it would be in the same category as R5D4, simply because was being sold, had the rights of a slave basically, but unlike this guy here, was able to actually have the chance to get out. I guess, if that
and
makes
be
any
sold.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Now,
Next is the probe droid.
yes, very last. This is funny though because this is one of the few droids on this list that are sent to completely different planets. Sometimes, completely
By
different
themselves.
systems by themselves. Now, are they able to be trusted with this responsibility because they're being monitored 24/7, or are they capable of handling themselves like this and they're trusted to handle themselves being so far away from their master when it could be so easy to just either shut down or to leave or to just not search?
I feel like they definitely have more rights than a normal droid, especially since Darth Vader trusted these types of droids to go onto Hoth to search for the Resistance with like Luke and Han.
Yeah, so I mean, throughout this entire or throughout the entirety of episode 5, there really is this urgency with Darth Vader to find Luke, but there's this urgency to find Darth Vader. Sorry, Darth Vader has the urgency to find Luke, and this is something. This is a high value target. Luke is extremely sought after, and Darth Vader trusts these droids to do that. So I'm not sure would it be Master or Knight, since this droid is trusted, and this droid is given the right to go far beyond there.
But I feel like this droid was made for that though. So I feel like it would be following its normal rights as a droid, so I feel like it would just be a knight like normal. It's following its basic commands. It's supposed to go out and just find what it is told to find, surveillance, anything unusual.
That's still very general though. There's a wide range of things that need to be surveyed, and
True.
there's a lot of you. I mean, I could see this being used as a torture droid as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be repurposed. But if we are just talking about how we saw it used in the movie, no speculation. I think that it would belong
In Master.
in Master, just because it is given the trust to search for Luke Skywalker, and that is something that was very important to Darth Vader, and it has the right to do that.
So overall, droids have enough rights, but it's based on which droid.
Yeah, so
Every droid is gonna have a different amount.
every droid has a different amount of sentience and a different amount of rights. And if we look in this tier list here, if we look at the rights of each droid and we look at their sentience as well, I mean, look at the top. We have, R2D2 and C3PO right near the top, and we also have 4-Alarm right up here too. These droids are droids that we said have a lot of rights, and they're also droids that have a lot of sentience. Whereas if we look towards the bottom, we got the Ring doorbell, we got the torture droid. These droids have extremely little sentience, extremely little knowledge that they're even a living being, and they
They
have
have very little rights.
no rights. We think that there's a correlation between the rights that a droid has and the sentience that it has, because as a droid is given more rights, as a droid is given the ability to experience new things, to gain new opportunity, and to create more memories, that droid is going to gain more sentience.
So you think sentience is based off the rights, which rights will give experience, which then thus will help give sentience.
Yes, it's complicated, but as the droid gains rights, the droid gains sentience. That's the final statement that I think that can conclude all of the Star Wars universe, all of the droids that were ever created, that were ever fabricated. I think that it's safe to say that droids with rights have more sentience, and that is really the most important takeaway here. Now, it is also important to say that every droid deserves rights. I don't think that there's a single droid on this list, except for maybe Ring Doorbell, that doesn't deserve rights. I think they're all very capable of doing a lot of different things very efficiently, and they're all capable of being very helpful in their own ways if they were given the ability to help. You know, if they were given a chance to do something beyond their initial programming, they would basically just excel. They'd be able to do
As they
amazing
please.
things. So, wrapping it all up, yes, droids are sentient. Droids, varying amount of rights, and
Depends
every
on the type.
droid deserves rights.
More.
Every droid deserves more. Even R2D2 and C3PO. I mean, as much as we hate C3PO, you know, be a little bit nicer, you know.
I'm saying.
So that wraps it all up. This is the list, the droid writes, and may the pod be with you.